As many of you may know, Doom the Dark Ages is coming out May 15th, and while people are out here celebrating because the game looks good, you could parry, you have a chainsaw shield, you have a gun that shoots goddamn skulls, whatever. It's amazing, and if you ask me, I say I'm excited and exuberantly, happily ready to play Doom the Dark Ages, but with all the Doom stuff I've been seeing coming out, and just me being a fan of the Doom series itself, there's one thing that clicked on in the back of my brain, almost like a Russian spy or a sleeper agent. And that was a specific user who made a post on Reddit in the Doom subreddit that ended up leading people to figure out that this individual made a sex toy tier list, and it wasn't really big. It didn't gain too much news. It wasn't on Fox News. It wasn't on. It wasn't plasterized for everyone to see that local man was making sex toy reviews. It wasn't that big, and it never really took off from there. But I saw it, and I just wanted to share it with you guys because I feel like you guys deserve this. So to set the scene for when I first found this post, this was all the way back in 2022, back when COVID really first began. Lockdown, it was a couple months within the lockdown. At the time I was in school, and we were basically told that we were getting an early summer. A couple more months later, that just turned out to not be the case, and here we are today. But while locked down and playing Fortnite with the buddies, I was scrolling through Reddit, the Doom subreddit, because I love Doom. Doom Eternal was out, loved it. I think Ancient Gods Part 1 just came out during this time, and I was having an absolute blast playing. And there was a post a user made where they basically said, hey, can we stop talking about COVID? It's not gonna, go away. It's not gonna, talking about it in a Doom subreddit isn't gonna solve anyone's problems. All it is just controversy. And so be it. Have your talks. If, because at the time, COVID was very controversial to talk about for some reason. It's like it's a virus. It it's here. It's now. The only controversial thing that was really spewing from the coronavirus at the time was just a bunch of like 60-year-old like white women who didn't want to wear a mask because it was suffocating them, which just wasn't the case. You just didn't want to wear a mask. But the user just asked, hey, can we stop talking about COVID in the Doom subreddit? Let's focus just on Doom, which is fair, just keep Doom Doom. It's not like Doomslayer is going to come out of a portal and just start, whipping up people with COVID and start killing them all to benefit the human race. He's just not going to do that. But, I get to see where the guy's coming from, but the comments weren't necessarily on his side, and a lot of people took action to look at this person's profile. Looking through his profile, he was mainly very consistently posting and commenting in like conspiracy theory and like political subreddits and whatnot, which we're not here to talk about that. I could give a shit less about politics. But there was one very obvious one that a lot of people brought to the attention in the post, which is no longer available, and that is that he made a review of four different male milking machines. Not just like the little handheld ones. You do it, then you throw it under the bed so no one finds it. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you guys pictures, but Jesus, they're like industrial sized cock milkers or some shit, man. But he went through and reviewed for them, which I'm gonna show on screen, and I'm gonna read through it because back in the day I read it to my friends and we got a kick out of it. So with Doom: The Dark Ages coming out, what better way to celebrate it than this? so so here it is. The ultimate cock milker review and comparison thread. Off to a great start. In the world of sex toys, a toy that can simulate a good blowjob is pretty much the holy grail for most penis owners. I can agree. If I can get something that could simulate it, if God came down and said this thing's just gonna suck your wiener, I think I could live the next 30 years of my life pretty decently. Unfortunately, most people don't even know where to look or even if such a toy exists at all. Some may have heard of the famous Venus 2000. I haven't. I haven't heard of the Venus 2000, and I would consider myself a a slight knowledgeable gooner, but not when it comes to the toys at hand. Not really that. I know about the handcrafted stuff, the infamous Pringles. You get the two sponges. You get the glove, put it in a Pringles can, and then you kind of just go to town. Now, of course, I had to do like the little snack sized one, but we don't talk about that. Making matters worse is that many of these toys are very expensive, which can make experimenting with different options difficult or even impossible. Absolutely, prices have gone up, inflation is out the wazoo. How can you be sure you're spending your money wisely on the best cock milker? You don't want something that's just gonna like blow bubbles on it. You want something that's gonna like suck you into a different dimension. You want to blow a load and know that your next of kin is out there fighting like, I don't know, barbarians or some shit. Being raised by Konak the Barbarian. Thankfully for you, I've spent the last year or so experimenting with pretty much every major option, and I'm here to share with you my experiences with the options available. Now, before we continue, I want to point something out very very quickly. I want to reread this again. I've spent the last year or so experimenting with pretty much every major option. This person reviews 4 different wiener milkers, and the cheapest kind of goes from like $400. So in total, this person spent almost like $2,000 in a year's time span on different milkers. He has averaged 3 months with one. He used it for 3 months and is like, you know what, the jig's up. I'm not really feeling it anymore. It's not sucking me bone dry as it used to, and I kind of just need to move on. He's done that 4 times. I just wanted to get that out there. I found that funny. So, anyways, but he's actually going to be ranking it on a different series of categories, and that is ease of use. How much of a hassle is involved in using? You don't want to pull out and remake Frankenstein all over again. You just want to get your wiener sucked. You have a very time frame of, damn, I got to get my wiener sucked, and then goddamn, my wiener can't be sucked because now it's like, it's curved now. It's curved to the bottom. It's pointing at the floor, but in a saggy way. Storage, how easy it is to hide so your grandma doesn't find it. Keep in mind, this dude has 4 cock milkers within his household, so he has to be Doctor Strange or some shit. He has to be able to open up portals and send these, because I'm gonna put the pictures on screen. Like I said, these are industrial sized, like these are like the size of like a PC, right? Maybe even more. These are like the size. These like are the size of like the little like dolly pressure washers. Like they're insanely massive. So to have 4 of these just in your house, in your home, is insane. Now, if he lives alone, that's fine. All the power to you. The only person that's going to be in your house is a robber. Which, I mean, I feel like if a robber comes into your house, sees 4 different milkers, he's going to get out there as soon as possible. He might make a little donation to charity, if you get what I mean, but he's not going to stay there. He might be terrified even. Pleasure. How good does it feel to use? Like, are you getting your money's worth? Is the wiener sucking good, or are you just blowing a load to, make sure your wallet doesn't feel sad about your purchase? Value, how much does it cost and is it worth it? Like I said before, if you're throwing 5 Benjamins at something to suck your willy, it better be good, because why not just spend 2 Benjamins and have the real thing go down on your willy? Throw another Benjamin, you don't have to worry about the sensation of a blowy. You can get the sensation of a vaggie. Throw 5 Benjamins, you get to feel the feeling of butthole. And he also has an average overall score and then a personal score, to just separate personal beliefs away from the true goal, because over time you get attached. If you had something stuck in your willy for over a year, I would grow attachment to it. If I was just chilling with my thing kind of going down on me, kind of sounding like a vacuum cleaner, and then out of nowhere black smoke started coming out and then it lit on fire. I'm not really worried about the scars on my wiener. I'm now more worried about my darling. Love of my life is now up in flames. So the first milker we have this absolute philosopher of our time reviewing is the Hummer. And it's by the company Vito. And this comes out at an astounding price of $450. Now, to put that in perspective, me and my dad are actually going to be seeing Metallica in Houston. We're going to be seeing Metallica. And you might be asking, Brody, is this the concert where Metallica and Pantera are playing at with suicidal tendencies? Yes. Brody, that sounds like an expensive ticket. Absolutely. How much did that ticket cost? $350. So here's the stitch here. Here's the stitch here with this blowjob giver. I can go see Metallica and Pantera and suicidal tendencies for the low price of $350, or I can get my willy sucked for $450. So to give you the astounding prices here of these milkers, $450 is crazy. Introduction: at only half the price of a Venus or a Tremblr, and 1/4 of the price of an SRS-Kit, which he does review later on, but just to give you, this is the cheapest one, I'm pretty sure. This is the cheapest. The Hummer is the most economical milker currently available to the best of my knowledge. It is also by far the smallest and most compact. So, you know, it's like it's like the SMG of the ARs, you know. It's very compact. It doesn't really pack a punch, so to speak, I guess. Interestingly, the Hummer is the only milker to feature a vibrating sleeve. I was also pleasantly surprised upon finding out it's rechargeable and doesn't require batteries. Honestly, this is surprising. I didn't know that a lot of these milkers required batteries. Unless I doubt they're requiring like AA batteries. I figured that these would require like car batteries or some shit, where you'd have to like hook like a cable from your car or like a Ford truck to your milker. You know, your neighbors are going to be watching outside wondering, why is Billy Joe Bob have his truck with his hood open, you know, connected to his house? You know, hopefully is everything good. And then, you know, he peeks through the window and he sees, you know, he just sees you just not suffering. That definitely not suffering. Unfortunately, though, this may make it seem like the Hummer is a good deal at first glance. It's anything but. It's actually a portal to hell, actually. Ease of use: I will give credit where it's deserved. Of all the milkers, the Hummer is by far the easiest to use in terms of compactness. It's not very large, though it's somewhat heavy despite the compact size. You definitely won't want to drop it. And you can control the different suction modes and use either a wireless remote control or buttons on the device itself. There is also the option for randomized suction with where the... Damn it! I'm sorry, folks. There is also the option for randomized suction where the Hummer just switches between different suction speeds at random. I'm sorry, folks. I was stuttering so much. I was dreaming. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so interruptive. But kind of going back, I'm jealous. To have a random suction mode is absolutely insane. You know, speed 1, speed 2, speed 3, but the machine can feel what you want. Or more importantly, what the machine needs. And I think that's the most important part about this machine, about the Hummer, is that it can feel what's best for it and what's best for you, you know? Go fast and then slow, or then slow then go fast, or maybe just take a medium pace. They also have remote controls, which is cool. You know, you're just watching your TV, watching the latest episode of Invincible. Season 4 finally dropped. You get to, you know, get your wiener sucked while watching Alan the Alien. And while you try to, like, I don't know, raise the volume up, you accidentally, like, turn the suction mode all the way up, and now your wiener's sucked in the machine, and it rips it off. Pre-designed patterns are also available, or you can just control the pacing manually. It should be noted that the vibrator has to be turned on manually by holding down its activation button. I will admit the randomized pulsation is a pretty major selling point. I don't understand why the other milkers don't have this. But unfortunately, although you might be celebrating and you might already be putting your family in debt, grabbing your mom and dad's credit card, or just grabbing yours, you know, but this is where things kind of take a turn for the worst here, and I'll just read ahead. Unfortunately, the Hummer is held back by an extremely terrible design decision: the suction hose, or to be more precise, the material it's made from. Unlike the other milkers whose suction hose, the part that goes into the receiver's sleeve tube to generate the suction, are made from flexible rubber or plastic. The one for the Hummer is made from flimsy, hard plastic with virtually zero flexibility. So in short, it doesn't feel like you're entering the mouth of someone. It more or less feels like you're trying to rub the thing from iRobot. This by itself is bad, but what makes it especially awful is that the actual sleeve itself has nothing to actually keep the hose secured. In place upon being inserted, you have just a small hole you insert the hose into, and then you must simply keep the sleeve essentially in place the entire time. If for whatever reason the sleeve falls to the side or otherwise moves around at all, the hose will be instantly unplugged and the suction won't work. This means user mobility and the different ways you can use the toy are extremely limited. This is an atrocious design choice, and I can't believe they thought this was a good idea. It is such a giant design fail, it is almost single-handedly enough to give the Hummer a failing grade. Even worse still is that there is only one sleeve size, which I had some difficulty fitting into, despite being basically average sized. We got a guy who's packing. The only reason I'm not giving the Hummer the lowest score for ease of use, note that 1 is the lowest score not 0, is that it is comparatively more compact than the other milkers and also has more intricate controls. Truly a case of making something new while failing on the things that have already existed. Kind of going on an overview, having the option to have different controls sounds absolutely amazing, but to where you have to kind of like hold it in place or whatever, you can't helicopter it, folks. You can't helicopter it. You can't do like a handstand on it. No, you kind of. I assume just sitting on your couch, kind of keeping it there in place, is probably the best course of action for the Hummer. Pleasure. But the problem with the Hummer doesn't end with ease of use. The actual sensations themselves are also nothing special. In the promotional videos, you can see the Hummer sleeve move up and down the wiener. It does nothing of the sort. The sleeve stays in place and remains stationary. I will grant that the vibrations feel pretty nice, but that's not really why people buy milkers. The suction element is what interests people, and the suction for the Hummer, well, it sucks. So for this being like a suction milker, it doesn't really do it. It more or less just vibrates around your willy. So kind of like imagine a bunch of people kind of like flicking your wiener on like a 360 plane. Not really sucking, just kind of like, hey, there's physicalness here, but it ain't what you really want. But to end off the Hummer's review, he does give it a final personal score of 1 out of 5, which is the lowest score possible on his ranking. But he did give the overall average score a 2 out of 5. So maybe if you're down in the dumps and you maybe inherited a $450 from like a relative or something. But moving on to the next milker we got the Tremblr by F Machines, which, Jesus, coming at a price of $940, just shy of way of being able to buy the mystery box. Jesus Christ. Oh my god. F Machines Tremblr is a relative newcomer to the milker scene. I can't imagine that's one of the best scenes to be a part of. It can now be considered a rival to the Simpsons Venus 2000. I can only imagine just like Joe Rogan or something, like sitting down like double fisting 2 milkers at the same time. He's like on his podcast, he just has like a random person, just he has both people he has like both CEOs just kind of like cheering him on as he double pumps with 2 milkers. But is it any good? So far it sounds great. In terms of function, the Tremblr is in many ways actually very similar to the Venus. So much so, in fact, the 2 milkers can even use the same penis sleeves and tubes. You heard that, folks. You can, if you have a Venus and your buddy bought the Tremblr, you could basically use the same sleeves and tubes. It's fine. It's perfect. They're interchangeable. They might secretly be best buddies. Both use basically the same mechanical method for milking the penis. The difference being merely the design of the actual milker itself and its specific method of generating the suction pulses. The Tremblr uses a piston-style device, which the Venus doesn't. I guess we'll get to learn what the Venus's top government secret special chemical X formula is. The Tremblr is also more modern and features a wireless remote control that can be used to control the Tremblr. The controllers for the Venus are not wireless, and you also need 2 of them. Well, that's kind of crazy. Okay, supposedly the Venus is like the godfather of all of these, so to see that it needs 2 remotes is kind of weird. I don't think I've ever had a single device that I owned where it needed 2 remotes. So how does the Tremblr fare against the legendary Venus? Is it as good or maybe even better? Ease of use. Right off the bat, the Tremblr has one immediate advantage over the Venus, the wireless remote control. I mean, that's pretty fair. With the Venus, you have 2 wired controllers used to control speed and suction. The Tremblr only uses 1 wireless control that controls both. This results in fewer cables / annoyances and greater ease of use. Unfortunately, the Tremblr also suffers 2 major problems the Venus does not. Oh no. For starters, the Tremblr is disgustingly big. It's much larger than the Venus and weighs almost 22 pounds. Good lord, it's like a boulder that just sucks your cock. Oh my god. This might not be the big this. I'm just astounded by that. 22 pounds, Jesus. This might not be that big a deal once it's already sitting in place somewhere, but it's still a fairly considerable shortcoming. The second problem is how infuriatingly difficult it can be to get the hose to fit into the suction ports. With other milkers, this is easy and straightforward, but with the Tremblr, it's like they designed the hose to be just barely big enough to fit. I actually tore open the hose on multiple occasions while trying to get them to fit and had to remove the cracked bits of the hose by using scissors. It's easier if you apply a bit of lube to the ports and ends, but I shouldn't have to do this. This is not an issue with other milkers. I'm sorry to break us from this like biblical reading, but with Reddit on PC, if you're in a subreddit looking at stuff, they have like a side category on the right that shows other posts. And for this being an r/sex toys, I'm getting. I just want to divert your attention to some of this shit. Anal stretching and training. G-spot flappy and tapping. My clit started hurting when using a bullet vibe. Anyways, continuing. But by far the worst issue is damn it. But by far the worst issue is the manner in which you are expected to change the sliding length, how far the tube sleeve bobs up and down your wiener. You are actually expected to use a screwdriver to manually tweak this machine. Basically, if you want this thing to suck your willy good, you have to be the engineer from TF2 making a dispenser over here, folks. We're upgrading a century from 1 to 3, but you don't have enough scrap, essentially. Maybe I'm just unlucky or I got a bug machine, which you might have, mister. I feel like you maybe got like the alpha, where it's maybe just like a frog, kind of like with its mouth open trying to get a fly, and they just sent you that. But this doesn't sound like something for like commercial use. But my experience with this was terrible. The crank is very stiff, and oftentimes the settings will just default to something else than you intended. Even worse is the fear of breaking the damn thing in case you screw the bolt too far or too hard. This is absolutely not intuitive at all. So skipping over some stuff, he basically mentions that if you want to have the best experience with the Tremblr, you might as well just use or buy the sleeves and all the other parts that Venus sells, because he mentions earlier that you can just swap those parts out with the Venus ones, but at that point, why not just buy a Venus? I haven't seen the price of a Venus yet, so maybe the Venus, you don't even need to buy the Venus. You have to do like a blood sacrifice for a chance to get the Venus or something. But he also does mention that there are some safety concerns. Using the highest speed and suction settings for anything except a brief period of time can numb your willy. This numbness can last for days or even weeks depending on how badly you abused it. Moving on to storage. The Tremblr is large and cumbersome and weighs over 20 pounds. The fact that it has the F machine logo all over it also means it's impossible to hide its true purpose. Yeah, so you really can't have it like a lot of others where you kind of just like keep it in like maybe like a band, like garage or something like that, and like your cousin or something comes in, it's like, yo, dude, what's that? And it's like, oh, dude, it's an amp. And like he touches it, and then it's like just a bunch of crust. It has just a fat layer of crust on it. He's like, dude, why is it crusty? It's like, I jam out and sweat a lot. What else do you think? But then like if he puts his ear up to it, then he hears like the cries and screams of a lot of like mint to be, and he never visits your house again. Kind of sad. True story. Basically, in short, he ends it off by saying that the Tremblr is basically just a Venus, but inferior. Kind of like a disgusting replica of the Venus. Just an alternate dimension where the Venus just wasn't what it was meant to be. So he gives it an overall score of 2 out of 5, but he gives it a personal score out of 3 out of 5, which makes me believe that this was maybe like the first one he bought. He was very emotionally invested on it, so he had like a bit of slight personalization with it, which is fine. It's normal to hold on to things. Hold on to your seats, folks. Hold on to your seats. We have the Venus 2000 by Sibian. He doesn't have the price listed. I think I might have been. I think I might have been right. You can't buy it anymore. You have to sacrifice people for it. Hold on, I actually can't read this. I need to know how much this costs now. It's on Amazon? No way. Oh, I can't show any of this. Oh, good. Yeah, no, I can't show a lick of this. Oh my god. They're asking me questions about my penis. When erect at the thickest point. Length. Dude, why? I'm gonna have to go to Men's Warehouse and ask the poor tailor to measure my schlong just so I can rent a Venus, which I don't think I can. If I go back, am I already a customer? Yeah, I'm about to be. The only countries they have you listed for is Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. The Venus 2000 has been around for decades and is the de facto standard cock milker. So yeah, I looked at a timeline for it because they have a timeline on their website. It showed that they started back in the 1980s, dude. That's insane. It functions largely on the same as the Trembler. In fact, the physical sensations feel almost identical. So how does the Venus compare to the Trembler? Unlike the Trembler, the Venus does not feature a wireless remote. This is rather disappointing. Instead, you have two controllers that connect directly to the milker unit. One controls the speed of the suction pulses, and the other how much air is pumped in and out of the receiver. This influences how much the sleeve slides. Less air equals sleeve stays closer to the wiener. Unfortunately, this means that there are many annoying cables to work with. The cables themselves are also not very long. While laying on my bed, I found that placing the Venus on top of a nearby chair worked well. Just be careful not to knock it down. Setting it up is easy enough. The Venus unit itself is noticeably more compact and less heavy compared to the Trembler. I find that it is not hard to move the Venus around to different places whenever needed. The different cables remotes can be a bit annoying. However, unlike the Trembler, I did not experience any difficulties connecting the hose to the unit or sleeve. One thing to note, this also applies to the Trembler as well. Depending on your wiener shape, you might also experience pop-offs. This is a problem. It is indeed. Pleasure. In truth, there really isn't much to say here that wasn't already said for the Trembler. Mechanically, the wiener sleeve and suction sliding method for the Venus is almost exactly identical as that of the Trembler. It's pretty much the same sensation. As such, I would just grade it the same as I did the Trembler. You see, I feel like I was kind of given like false hope or something. I thought like I thought I was like hearing like absolute like peakness. Like I thought I was like hyping it up. He kind of made it to where like Reed Richards himself designed this Venus specifically for my wiener. No one else's wiener but mine. You know, like Tony Stark set aside his like weapon manufacturing, became Iron Man, and then put aside Iron Man and said, "We need to make Brody something he could stick his wiener." Am I right, Avengers? Hulk won, wiener sucked. You know, but he has Black Widow, so fuck. So he gives it a overall and personal score of a 4 out of 5. So he says it's overhyped and it's basically the same as the Trembler, but he gives it such a good score. I want to say that there's some bias here. Maybe he's like a history buff or like a history nerd, so like he respects it being the first. But honestly, that doesn't really mean much if it means that it's just on like subpar with everything else. I gotta say, dude, I was hyped to make this video, but now I don't even want to continue, man. I'm depressed. You know, I'm sad. You know, I was really hyped for the Venus, man, but I guess it's not worth it, man. Anyways, moving on to the final milker of this review, and we have the SeriousKit made by SeriousKit Workshop. Hold your hats, folks, when I tell you this. Price: 2 to 3 bands. That is a courtroom full of Benjamins. All right, that is a council of Benjamins just sitting there. These Benjamins are sitting there thinking, dude, we're gonna be used for like a house payment. Nah, dude, we're gonna be used to like put on like a down payment for our car. All of us Benjamins, we're here because like we're gonna buy like, I don't know, something cool like a killer PC. No, dude, you're buying a killer milking machine. You know, if this isn't a 5 out of 5, or actually no, if this isn't a 7 out of 5, breaking the scoreboard. There is no reason why something should be $2,000 to $3,000. Look, I've never done it before, but I'm certain that 3 bands can give you like, I would say like a 3-month supply of like at least decent meth heads blowing you for like, actually, if it's like decent meth heads with a bit of teeth missing, I feel like you might get maybe like half a year worth. You know, maybe if you strike up a deal with the pimp, you know, you might even get like 7 or 8 months. You know, $3,000? That's insane. For just blow, you know? If you try to get something else, then maybe, you know, but... damn. Unlike the other milkers, this one is a milker. As in, it actually is a literal milker, albeit one modified to function as a sex toy. This makes a wait a minute. So this is like a cow udder milker. Some absolute fiend, some absolute Einstein went on like a went to like a farmer's house or whatever, like went to like a barn and saw a farmer using like the automated like milk suckers. I was like, I need that for me. And he went in late at night and he stole it. And he spent years manufacturing it, building it to his own design. And when he finally cracked the code, finally got the schematics, he said, you know what? The world needs this too. Guys need this too. The people need this too. And whoever did this, if you're out there, you're our Batman. This world and all of its problems is Gotham. And you are the Gotham savior. Thank you, Batman. Thank you. Ease of use. Unfortunately, the Serious Milker is the least practical to use of all the other milkers. This is largely because, unlike the other milkers, the Serious Milker is an actual real milker that requires a separate pump device to be connected to it. You can order one along the website along the milker. This means things like pulsation speed and vacuum pressure have to be controlled manually on the milker itself. There is no remote, wireless or otherwise. In addition, the milker itself has to be assembled manually. You ever watch Breaking Bad and like Walt's in like the factory, in like Gus's factory, and like he's like setting it up and he's like turning all the knobs and stuff like that. Jesse Pinkman's in the background like, yeah, bitch, yeah, Walter, crank them knobs, bitch. You know, and you know, Walter's just like, Jesse, shut up. You know, like that's basically what you gotta do here. You know, like the big vats. I would assume this is what it looks like. I don't know what it looks like yet. This is not very complicated to do, which that's not bad, but it still means there's a little bit of a learning curve initially. It also means you must be careful not to lose any parts. If you do, you can probably order replacements though. So honestly, for you paying $2,000 to $3,000, I feel like they're like Lego. You know, if you get a Lego set and you're missing like 5 pieces, you could just email Lego and they're like, all right, here's like 70 of that same piece. You know, you know what? I trust I trust SeriousKit. You know, I would give them my social security number for a weekend and leave my card available. You know, like leave my card open. I trust them here. I feel trust being built up here. Another inconvenience is that the tube receiver can only really be suspended directly over the wiener since it attaches to a metallic box of sorts that helps regulate the suction. I imagine you could probably order longer hoses to make up for this. In fact, I intend to do so. But by default, you are pretty much stuck with the only one kind of setup, laying on your back or sitting. Furthermore, you need to find something to actually suspend the receiver from. Ideally, that would be something like a hook in the ceiling or something. This also means you're probably stuck using the milker in only one specific location. Which, I mean, although you can't do any tricks or backflips or whatever, all these machines are meant to do is replicate a, wiener suction. But even then, you know, the whole thing from start to finish, you know, you're not really moving, you know. Disregarding of the milkers, I don't think a single guy on this planet of the earth has been moving or has been in motion while stroking their wiener. I can't imagine just it's a nice sunny like morning or whatever. You're doing the dishes, you're doing the laundry, you're taking the dog out outside, you're giving it food, you're giving it water, you're wiping down the counter, and all while doing this, you're just stroking your shit, right? You got like facial compilations on like your screen in the living room. Like I feel like this is something that just doesn't happen. It might be like a thought, but I don't think anyone really like kind of like puts this into action or like executes it. You know, all it takes is like one like delivery driver, like a DoorDasher, or just someone from like UPS bringing like a package or something, probably more parts you ordered, and just seeing you stroking your shit, watching Criminal Minds or some shit. That would be scary. All right, just imagine you're in their shoes. You pull up to the front door, you knock on it, and through the window you see just this butt ass naked dude staring at his TV, just stroking his shit. Probably has like a glass of like orange juice or some shit. It's early morning. Birds are still chirping. It's like one of those like dark blues outside. Noise is also a major problem. As mentioned, the SeriousKit milker uses a separate pump device. It is very loud. Forget about using this if you live in an apartment complex where you are surrounded by other people. If you don't live alone or at least have some isolated space of your own, you can't use it without risking complaints from neighbors. Is this like an oil rig or something? It doesn't just make loud pounding noises. What if it just sounds like a steam train or some shit just in your room? He also recommends that you keep the pump in another room than the milker itself. So going back on it, I can just imagine someone's parents are just in a room trying to watch a show, and right next to them on the couch, they have the pump just straight up screaming in agony while you're just screaming in pleasure in your other room. Just straight up just getting sucked to life. Just getting the life drained from you. Cleaning is another issue. Interestingly, the SRS milker has an automatic lube system that connects directly to the receiver. That is insane. The way it works is you fill a lube. There is a keg specifically designed for lube. I have to look at this. I have to look at what this looks like. What is this called? An SRS kit? SRS kit. You poor thing. Oh, you poor being. This is like something you would see in like a zombies map for an Easter egg. So this is what you stick the willy in. This is like the metallic box he was. What is this supposed to be? This looks like it holds dimensions and knowledge. What is it doing sucking my wiener? This is scary. No, I don't want to give you my email. And okay, I guess this is the pump. This must be the pump. I like its color though. White with like a light blue. This is nice. Can I just keep going up? Oh my god, these people are about to have nightmares. They're gonna wonder what evil being needs 100. Can I go more? I can go more than 100. Oh my god. My first million is spent on nothing but milkers. Please tell me you have 60. You gotta have 50. What, you trying to run a business here? What? You gotta have 40. Come on. Okay, maybe you had a big Black Friday sale. You gotta have 30. Okay, what about 24? All right. What about 18? Come on. 11, 10, 9, 8. Jesus Christ, how many people are buying milkers? You don't even have 5 somewhere in a warehouse? You don't have... Oh, they're out of stock. They're out of stock, folks. The lube is then automatically applied to the wiener before getting sucked into the hose. Remember, this is an actual milker, so it actually does collect the liquid inside the sleeve. In theory, this should be ideal because it means you don't have to stop the action to apply more lube, but my experience with the automatic lube system has been that it's more trouble than it's worth. For starters, you need to be very carefully tweak the flow of lube because otherwise you could end up filling the receiver with it. The first time I used it, I accidentally poured like half a liter of lube all over my bed when I took the receiver off. This was not fun to clean. Or alternatively, you could accidentally use too little and risk ending up with blisters on your wiener. I'm just using my hands at this point, dude. I'm perfectly fine with the 5-finger dash, dude. Oh my god. Furthermore, some of the special types of receivers don't actually seem to work well with the automated lube system. It's really only practical when using standard receivers. It's also worth crucially... Oh god, Jesus. It's also worth actually noting that you need to manually tweak the vacuum pressure using a crank on the milker. This is extremely important because setting the pressure too high is actually dangerous. Guys, you could rip your wiener off here, folks. You can die here. You can die. All right. If you're out here, you're afraid to talk to the ladies. You're scared of conversation. Just imagine just Terminator barging down your door. T8000 or T800, T1000. Pick your preference. Either way, they just come into your room, fucking reach down, they just rip your fucking wiener off. Find you a girl, folks. Find you a man. Do whatever you want. Just don't find a machine. All right. At worst, you might get teeth. At worst, with this, you're on your bed bleeding out. All right. Just be careful here, folks. Please. Please. I care for you guys. Don't. Please be careful. The manual that comes with the milker warns against setting the pressure too high on multiple occasions. Remember that you are using an industry-grade pump. Use your common sense if you don't want to end up in the hospital with a ruined penis. Pleasure. So the SeriousKit is not convenient to use, but what about the feel? Does it feel good to use? Oh, yes, it does. It really fucking does. As a matter of fact, SeriousKit Milker is the only milker toy that actually feels like you're getting your dick sucked. Because you are. That little eagle screech right there. This shit's fucking American. Storage. It's a fucking milker. Out of all the things I've seen, this one doesn't look like a milker at all. It's mainly just the part that you stick the wiener in that raises suspicion. But I feel like if I had this in my room and my parents came in, they would think I was cooking meth. They would think I was making fentanyl. Closing comments. The SeriousKit is the cocksucker dick milker, hands down, not even a question. It's not even a contest. It's legitimately the only sex toy I have ever bought that actually comes close to feeling like a blowjob or having your dick sucked. Whereas all the other milkers, all the other useless pieces of shit that I wasted my money on that try to be the serious milker, fucking failed, dude. We should all just praise to the SeriousKit. You know what? Let's get a bunch of bricks. Let's get a bunch of cement. Let's get a bunch of drywall. Let's get a bunch of wooden support beams. We're building a church for the SeriousKit because this shit is heavenly. Also, just in case if you lost track of time while watching this video, read the title. All right. You read the title? Okay, yeah. This all started from this guy saying, hey, can we not comment about COVID on a Doom subreddit? This was insane. Revisiting this little review here is hands down a masterpiece. I definitely, a couple years ago when I read this to my friends, I took for granted just how amazing this review is. It's beautiful, dude. This is like my 7th take of this video because I was crying. All right, I was crying tears of sadness and jealousy that I couldn't own any of these. But then I was crying tears of happiness that there's someone on this earth that can experience this. And then I cried tears of jealousy and sadness again because I couldn't. But it's not about what I want. It's about what the people want. And this is what the people want, folks. The moral of the story, open up a savings account. Because sometimes in life, $3,000 is worth the price of some. You know, I would even go as far as to say, you know what? If YouTube ever becomes a hit for my channel and I start getting paid from YouTube, I will say it right here and there. If I ever get $3,000 from YouTube, sponsors, whatever, I will buy a SeriousKit. I won't make a video using it, all right? Because that's another ballpark, all right? But yeah, just remember this all came from a guy on the Doom subreddit. I think he's the account is suspended. I'm not going to say the account name, but the account is suspended. But he also commented on a bunch of other Doom posts, but no one mentioned this review until that post, which has unfortunately been taken down since. But that's really about it, folks, and I'll see you guys in the next video.